Good afternoon, everyone. Originally, I was going to paint a Herrerasaurus for you. The plan was to give this guy a Jurassic Park the Game deco. So I went ahead and I threw some paint on him. I used masking putty to achieve the patterns on him. But after it was all said and done, I took a look and I thought, that just looks like one big pile of shit. And Dr. Ian Malcolm agrees with me. But speaking of large piles of shit, I do have a few dinosaurs that would leave such things, and I should paint those. So we'll paint the Hammond Collection Triceratops, which is a pretty good figure. Aside from being on the smaller side, for some reason not having an articulated jaw. To fix that, we're going to be using the replacement head designed by Rod's Random Works and printed and distributed by Ceratech. It consists of the head itself, as well as some other stuff. There is the lower jaw, very beaky, the two brow horns, the tongue, complete with a big ol' canker sore, and the nose horn. Now, in order to install this replacement head, the first thing we've got to do is cleanly decapitate the Triceratops. I highly recommend using a cup of hot water for this. You want to remove the original head from this assembly here, and preferably not pull the ball out of the socket. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt to get back in. Then we just super glue the new head assembly onto this. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Of course, since I pulled the ball out of the socket, I've got to deal with that first. All done. And it's going to retain its full range of motion. Now, I work with Marco a lot and use a lot of his replacement parts, and they are excellent. But Rod's Random Works makes some pretty amazing stuff too. And he's a cool guy and gave me some really solid advice when I bought my first resin 3D printer. If you don't follow him on Instagram, you probably should. Okay, now we need to attach the horns to the replacement head, which is done by simply supergluing them in place. Now you may notice that the horns that I'm supergluing on are white, not the brown ones. And there's a very good reason for this. I like to make more work for myself. Actually, the reason for this is because just in case the paint scratches on these horns, it'll be less obvious if they are white material rather than brown. So I molded them and then recast them in a different material. There is nothing wrong with the horns that it came with. Like I said, I just like to make more work for myself. Okay, this Triceratops face is looking horned. It is looking horned. Get your mind out of the gutter. Now we can just glue it onto the neck assembly. Now we just wait 3.5 minutes for the glue to dry. Now, the Jurassic Park Triceratops isn't actually brown. Stan Winston Studios painted a beautiful gray animatronic with intricate striping patterns on it. But since elephants, rhinos, and other large animals like to cover themselves in dirt, Steven Spielberg thought that would be a good idea for the Triceratops as well, and covered up that beautiful paint job with dirt, which resulted in a really convincing Triceratops. And personally, I think he made the right call. But we're going to paint a clean Triceratops today, more or less. The first thing I'm going to do is paint the inside of the mouth before I attach the lower jaw. For that, I'm using my favorite dinosaur inside of the mouth color, classic caramel mixed with a little bit of metallic red. We'll paint the tongue too. Once that's done, I'm going to make a wash from real brown and color shift purple, and we'll go over all of those parts with that. With that done, I'm going to use some antique parchment and paint that sore on the Triceratops' tongue. Now we can put the tongue inside of the lower jaw, and then put that lower jaw inside of the head. This will be a lot easier if I heat it up first. Success. And now the Triceratops is no longer doomed to having its mouth closed for all eternity. And now that this Triceratops has a fancy new head, we can start with the base coat. For the base coat, we are going to use Elephant Gray. And this is pretty simple, just time consuming. We're just going to try to evenly cover up all of the original coloration with that Elephant Gray color. Stay tuned, we'll get there eventually, or skip ahead. Alright, we made it. Now, rather than doing this Triceratops exactly like Stan Winston Studios did, I'm going to be basing it more on that Crash McCreary concept art. Because Crash McCreary concept art freaking rocks. And that Crash McCreary concept art has some much warmer colors in the armpits, leg pits, under the throat, and the tail. So I'm going to mix up some warm flesh color by adding a tiny bit of red to warm beige. And then we'll just generously apply that to all of the areas with some warm color, using my previous Hammond Collection Triceratops as reference, because hey, 3D reference. I'm very happy with how my first Hammond Collection Triceratops turned out. He just can't open up his jaw. Which is why for round 2 we are using that Rod's Random Works replacement head. Now, you know what color this Triceratops is missing? Warm buff. So I'm going to add a little bit of that now, and that's just going to tone down the warmth in that counter shading a little bit. My goal ultimately is to make this new Triceratops look as close to my first Triceratops as I can. Once I've applied this warm buff, I'm going to go ahead and mark out where to put those stripes. Again, using my original Triceratops as reference. I'm using jet black to mark out these stripes. They'll be covered in a lot of gray layers later, but I want them to still show through, at least faintly. Darker colors are better for that, and it doesn't get much darker than jet black. And because we don't want a lopsided dinosaur, we're going to paint the left side as well. There's really not much to it. Just copy the stripes on the right side, but make them left-sidey. Once all those stripes on the torso and tail are pretty much done, we can start in on the frill. And I'm just going to try to copy the patterns on my old Triceratops as much as I can, which seems to be a series of stripes coming down from the edge of the frill towards the face. There's also a little bit of patterning around the eye, so we'll go ahead and mark that out as well. Now that I've blocked in all of the patterning on this Triceratops, we can move on to our favorite part of painting dinosaurs, the toothpick speckling. The general rule of toothpick speckling is to make the speckles larger and denser the closer to the stripes they are, and smaller and more sparse the further away they are. There are a couple of exceptions and outliers, but generally that's how we do it. There's a lot of speckles, and this may take a while, so buckle up. Or skip ahead. As for me, I will catch you guys on the next thrilling step.
Speckle, speckle, speckle.
Alright, I guess that actually wasn't too bad. The Jurassic Park Triceratops is covered in a series of large osteoderms in addition to its regularly pebbled scales. Now, on the Stan Winston animatronic, prior to being covered with dirt, they were painted a lighter color and kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. On the Crash McCreary concept art, they're still visible, but they're a lot less sore thummy. So on this Hammond Collection Triceratops, in order to try to strike a balance, I'm going to paint them all lighter prior to going over this Triceratops with more and more layers of airbrushed gray. So they'll be visible, but not sore thummy. Hopefully. And we are going to use territorial beige to do it. Alright, now that all of that is done, we can hit this guy with the airbrush. I'll start with dark gray, which is really more of a medium gray, and then I'll just slowly add some darker colors to it until I reach the desired coloration. Right now it's looking a bit light. So we'll just darken that up a little bit, spray some more on, and then check to see how it's looking. Closer, maybe a touch of dark granite will get us exactly where we want though. Let's find out. This is looking a lot better. I think that we are nearly there. Ah, yes. Very Triceratopsy. Well, with that pesky airbrushing out of the way, I think we can paint this dinosaur's horns and toenails. We're going to use khaki for that. We'll start out by painting all these little piggies, and then we'll work on the horns. Oh yeah, we should probably also paint the beak. Now that the beak is painted, we can work on those horns. All 3 of them. because this particular spiky shovel face has 3 horns on its face. Because, you know, Triceratops. While we're at it, we're going to go ahead and paint all those epicetals too. And we're going to use a small paintbrush. They're a little big for a toothpick, but too small for a regular sized paintbrush. And when it's time to get back to those horns, I think we're just going to switch to a slightly larger paintbrush. And those are, after all, pretty big horns. Alright, horns done. Now on to the next step. As we get closer to the completion of this Triceratops, we're going to go ahead and hit the beak and horns with a dirty burnt umber wash. Washes are messy, but Triceratopses aren't exactly clean anyways. I mean, you saw what it left on my workspace earlier. So we'll just go ahead and apply this wash with disregard to how messy it is. Well, since we're messing around with this wash anyways, I think we're going to go ahead and get some of that grime in between his toenails. If I take the time to put a dirty wash on the feet of the beast of the Mesozoic Tyrannosaurus rex, it's not really fair to the Triceratops if I don't give him the same treatment. With all that wash business done now, I'm going to go ahead and apply a dry brush of antique parchment onto the front portion of the horns. In addition to bringing out some of the pre-wash color, that's also going to give it the appearance of having a cleaner horn towards the tip and having it be dirtier and grimier and more yellowed as it gets closer to the base. And we'll also give the same treatment to the beak. Because a little bit of that wash slopped onto the Triceratops' frill and face, I'm going to go ahead and dry brush him with some dark granite. And that'll help to clean him up just a little bit. And you know what? While I'm at it, I think I'm just going to give this whole Triceratops a pretty quick dry brush with that dark granite. When it comes to Triceratops, I think a dark granite dry brush is a wonderful thing. Another important part of this Triceratops repaint is the eyeballs. It's going to be kind of hard for him to see if we don't paint those in. We'll start by applying some chestnut with our tree toothpick, and of course we're going to have to do this to both eyes. You know, for the sake of depth perception, unlike our poor beast of the Mesozoic Tyrannosaurus rex from last week. While the chestnut for the eyeballs dries up, I'm going to take some of that wash from earlier and stick in the Triceratops' nostrils. Having a little bit of drippy snot will just help to give his nose a little bit more life. Once the chestnut for the eyes is dried, we're going to use some gloss black and paint in those pupils. Which, again, we're going to do to both eyes. And with that small but vital detail done, I think that this Triceratops is nearly finished. Well, all in all, I think I did a pretty good job mimicking my original Hammond Collection Triceratops. I guess it's time for some glamour shots. Coming up next week, we're going to unbox and paint this little bundle of joy. Won't that be nice now?